trying not to play with my hair when I first come on, because so many people have commented on it and they've told me, it's like, you are so vain over your hair. I'm not vain over my hair. My hair just is my hair. Who am I? I'm Suzanne Titkemeyer. I wrote for Pathos for almost 10 years. I wrote for No Longer Quivering for over 10 years, even though it always wasn't with Pathos. And I have a lot to say about evangelical, fundamentalist, quiverful religions. Now, I know there are some out there that are calling these religions the C word. Some of them are, some of them aren't. It's like the church I was going to, which was non-denominational for like 15, 20 years. It didn't start out that way. Hey, T. King, it didn't start out that way. When we started out, it was pretty normal. Normal theology, normal things they did. After a while, it started to take that C word turn, the C-U-L-T word. And by the end, I'd say that if we weren't actually the C word, we were definitely circling the drain on that, because it was definitely weird. And I'm getting ready to tell the tales of what happens if you're a woman and you have serious ailments going on while you are in your quiverful church. One of the things that happened a lot with our quiverful church is you were encouraged not to go to the doctor. It was considered idolatry. It didn't start out that way. But for me especially, before I was diagnosed with significant sleep apnea, I used to have terrible pains in my hands and my wrists especially. And they diagnosed me with Epstein-Barr's. Almost everybody at my church, when they asked me how I was doing that day, I said, well, I'm in a lot of pain today, said, you can't keep making that profession. You have to stand up and say, I am fantastic. I am believing in my healing. I don't have any symptoms. I'm not going to talk about the symptoms because the symptoms just glorify the other guy. Yeah, so they would teach that having symptoms, admitting to having symptoms, let me rephrase that. It wasn't the having of the symptoms. It was the admission that you were having the symptoms, or if you acknowledged the symptoms you were having in any way, shape, or form. They said that was an open doorway for Satan to just boogie his ass right on in. Come right on in and doing the Watusi. And he would take you down and take your entire life down. Now, I never listened to that. That never affected me. I still went to the doctor, and during the time they thought I had Epstein-Barr's, I took the medication they gave me. I did the things they said, and then it was discovered I had bad sleep apnea, and that took care of the Epstein-Barr's. All the pain I was having went away once I started receiving treatment. And I told you how I joined because my youngest was very sick. And let me tell you, I never allowed any of their theology to stop me from bringing my baby in to see her senior moment here, blood doctor, hematologist, I guess it would be, or any of the other doctors that she needed to see UVA to stay well. And we managed to get her through that. But while I was doing that, sneaking around seeing the doctor, there were a lot of people that didn't. I can't watch right now. I will after work. Hey, Wendy. J-Rod going on a boat ride with her daughter, Narita. Okay, I am going to talk about that at the very end. So that's really not, I was going to talk about my own quiverful journey with these things. So I know a lot of women very well that would not go to the doctor. They would not take medications. Medications were considered evil. Going to the doctor was considered idolatry. And I saw them ignore any number of very serious ailments. And I heard the same theology being preached at every other church connected with ours. The women would not go to the doctor. The men did. The men would go to the doctor, and there was nobody said a boo to the goose for them going to the doctor and not praying for healing, because we were also taught that time frame. that when Jesus died on the cross, he took every single illness, every single injury, every single anything medical to the cross, and that he had because of that, Satan had no right to put illness on the believers. If only it worked so simply. Oh, my sweet summer child. So I saw women that had all kinds of problems. I have a girlfriend who's still kind of borderline in that movement, that her and I were diagnosed with having bouncing blood sugar problems around the same time. Okay, where I am at with that is I test my blood sugar, I take my metformin, and I'm down to the lowest metformin dose I've had all curious about. And I have been able to control my blood sugars and not have them impact me. I know from the way I'm feeling if it's too high or too low. And it does get too low sometimes now because I'm at the last dose. I'm at that almost never taken dose. Whereas if I do something like last week, I went out to Canadian Thanksgiving with friends, and I knew damn good and well I had to double my dose without even testing my blood sugar, because I ate a piece of cake and I ate stuffing and stuff without any kind of salad. Let me tell you, if you have blood sugar problems, salad is your best friend. I can eat a salad and follow it with a candy bar and it doesn't affect my blood sugar levels, but candy bar without the blood sugar, without the salad does. So back to her. She has been ignoring this. And she's been saying, well, I don't want to take metformin. I don't want to take metformin. Metformin is a drug. Saying, Joni, it's an old drug. It's a good drug that works. It's a good, healthy tool for controlling your blood sugar. So she wouldn't take it. She took turmeric and cinnamon and red rice yeast and all these things. And those things can be useful. I'm not going to say there's no place for supplements. Here's my garlic that I take when I get sinus infections instead of going and getting an antibiotic, because having had MRSA and lived on antibiotics, I just don't do that anymore. Hey, Rena. So my friend played around with her blood sugar levels, refused to take metformin, and now she's doing the insulin thing. You know, it could have been avoided. Metformin is a whole lot cheaper than insulin these days. And so that's how a lot of women up there handled it. If they could not heal it with an herbal thing, if they couldn't heal it with, example is a guy we had in the group that had testicular cancer. And instead of going for the traditional treatment, instead of going and, letting them remove the cancer and doing chemo and radiation, his deal was he started drinking carrot juice. He drank so much carrot juice that he started turning orange, just like our lovely Nancy Campbell of Above Rubies does. She drinks that much as he did, and it actually turned his skin orange. And he still died of prostate cancer. Even though it's not frowned upon for men to go to the doctor, it's just women. It is sad, Rena, and he's not even alone. I had a girlfriend I was very close to for some years until I started going to Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship for conferences. She actually, hey, Tammy, she actually told me once I started doing this, says, you're going to have to choose our friendship or going to Toronto. And I said, Chloe, it's been nice knowing you. Because nobody dictates to me my spirituality or anything else like that. So I tend to react that way. When someone tries to give you an absolute and say, you have to do it this way. Hell no, the only thing I have to do is stay semi-white and pay taxes and die eventually. But everything else is, open to interpretation in life. Everything. So I missed her and I didn't see her for some years. And then all of a sudden I started getting messages from all the women in my old group about her. She wouldn't go for physicals. She would not go to the doctor ever. She only used herbal medicines. Seen her damn close to die a couple of times because she had serious infections. She wouldn't get treated. And I'm drinking the thing that they all told me in my old church was going to kill me. I'm drinking Diet Coke right now. If it's going to kill me, it's sure taking the slow route to do it. Anyway, she apparently started having massive migraines and nothing helped. No blood root, no nothing else helped them. So she finally went to the ER. She finally went to the ER. When she went to the ER, they discovered that she had cancer. Not only did she have cancer, it was all in her brain, it was in her lungs, it was all over the place. She had cancer of either the uterus or cervix or both. I'm not sure they ever figured out which one it was. Well, anyway, they told her she had 2 weeks to live. 2 weeks. And so my friend died in her 50s of a treatable condition. If she had just been having regular treatment, regular checkups with a gyno, with the yearly pap smear, chances are this would have caught it way before it ever tried to move into the brain or the lungs or anywhere else. And they could have dealt with it. They could have dealt with it. She's also the one that told me I was wrong for having a complete hysterectomy, even though I was having so many issues with that part of my body, to the point where my red blood cell count went down to scary levels. I mean, I did it for a reason, and I got a lot of pushback and footing from her. And she did die around 2-3 weeks later. But here's the thing. She spent the last couple of weeks of her life going from ministry to ministry to ministry, praying to be miraculously healed by God. Do I think it can happen? Well, sure, anything's possible. But at the same time, I'm just going to say, it's unlikely. We just don't see that. We don't see all those miraculous healings. I don't care if Bethel is teaching this and that they're going around with their death-raising team. The reality is we are just not seeing this. And I don't really even know why we're not seeing it. Even though the Bible says, Jesus actually told his followers, the things I'm doing, you will do them and do greater, which all of my Fundy friends have taken to mean that they'll be able to heal each other by prayer. Didn't quite work that way, unfortunately. And that's really sad. So she died, but I still think the saddest one for me was somebody I wasn't very close to. And I don't even remember this lady's real name. It was something with a P. So I'm going to call her Petunia because I don't remember exactly what her name was because I wasn't close. Yeah, he gives us brains. There's medicine. Exactly. There's nothing wrong with praying for healing and taking the medicine. There's not a thing in this world wrong with that because, God's allowed knowledge. And there's this such thing as doctors. They were even around during Jesus's day. How many times did he tell somebody to go to the doctor to certify their healing? He actually did say that a number of times. So there's that. But Petunia was the worst of them. They joined our church. And when they joined our church and they stood up and they did their little spiel, we're so-and-so, so-and-so, she said that she had breast cancer and she was claiming Jesus's healing, that she was waiting for God to heal her on this. Well, on the way out the door that day, I spoke to the husband and the wife and I said, good news. Many types of breast cancer are very, very treatable. So, and I explained that I'd had it and I had chemo and radiation. I still bear the scars of that too, by the way. Even though I had scar revision a couple of times, I still have scars on my left boob. Franken boob. So she didn't say much. He said nothing. About 20 minutes later, the husband came up to me in the hallway of the church and chewed me out. Why? He said that they're entirely trusting God for her healing, that they did not need to hear the negativity of medical treatment. No kidding. He stood there and chewed me out for having had chemo and radiation. Chewed me out. I could not believe it. I was kind of like, and so she didn't get medical treatment. Not at all. She just got lots and lots of prayer when she turned up at our healing team, Shades of Bethel. We'd pray for her to be healed. Towards the end, it was horrific. I'm just going to tell you, it was horrific. I visited one time. Rena, that is great. I'm glad it was benign. It was benign because we caught it early. You're right, Rena. And that's the way to do it. And I've had non-cancerous, let me get a tissue. My nose is killing me. I'm having a MRSA infection up one nose. As you can see, my nostril is teeny tiny right now. That's what MRSA can look like. It can look stupid, and I've got it. So back to scrubbing with Hippie Cleanse. So long story short, I went to visit her. I went to visit her towards the end of her life. We weren't seeing her at church. We're seeing her husband and her son, and it was just, she had wasted away to nothing. She looked like she had one foot on the gravestone and the other on the banana peel. It was a bad situation. I got there, and a lot of members of the healing team and others from the church were there, and they were praying. They were laying hands on her and praying for her. She was on her bed, looking like the shriveled little stick with that distinctive odor I've come to realize is death from cancer. When I smell that, I know what's going on. So I sat there with them for a while and silently prayed. Oh, Rena, it's just one of those things. And it's back on the garlic because that does help. So at one point, people started screaming, "There's silver, there's silver." They were claiming they were seeing silver raindrops falling from the ceiling, just falling, trickling down, several silver raindrops. And I was like, because I wasn't seeing anything remotely like that. I did not see silver raindrops falling. Everybody else did. Well, she died about 20 minutes later while we were all still there. And it was to me, it was like when my friend went through her thing. A huge waste, an enormous waste of a life, because if she had had the treatment early on, she might have lived. So she did not live. And she was not the only one that I saw similar things like that go on with. What was really particularly distressing to me in her account is 6 months later, the husband had a wife that was a good 20 years older than her, was probably 30 if she was a day, and he had a yellow Corvette. So he benefited when she died, and he just got a younger model. I saw that happen again and again. Our old Quiverfull church, if the wife died, not seeking any kind of treatment, then the husband would just get a newer model. And if the husband had insurance on the wife, he would be running around in a new Hummer or whatever. And I always found that really off-putting, because it's like women in this culture are fungible. They're interchangeable. It's like you blow out a tire, you get another one. You blow out a wife, you get another one. And I saw this again and again and again. Now, I'm not going to say I didn't see some miraculous healings, because I have seen some healings. But at the same time, I've never seen a healing from that kind of thing. Never, never, never. I don't know why that is, but there it is. And women aren't allowed to go to the doctors. They're driven crazy and told, hey, that's idolatry. So they end up with these kinds of things happening to them. They end up dying from preventable things. I had another friend that died from I don't know if it was a cyst or if it was just a boil that got large. She would not go to the doctor, and it took over her entire body and killed her. So that's what I mean when I talk about Quiverfull having a body count. Quiverfull does have a body count, a huge body count, because, yeah, these are good people that lost their lives. Do mostly women. ignore medical treatment. It doesn't. No, it's not an equal thing for men and women. A lot of men go to the doctor. Women will not. They'll try every kind of herbal medicine, supplement, whatever under the sun. In fact, my friend that died of prostate cancer after drinking all that carrot juice and going on the carrot juice cancer killing diet. He was one of the few men I know that did that. And while we were there, my husband had kidney cancer. He lost his right kidney. We found out he had kidney cancer when he had a kidney stone in the middle of the night and took him to the doctor, took him to the hospital, and they said, you have what looks like 3 kidneys in there, and one of those 3 is cancer. It was that big and that advanced. So they went ahead and took the kidney and the cancer, and they thought that they were afraid it had metastasized. We were told at first it looked like it had, but apparently it did not. So we lucked out. But I consider that because in our family, we did not go along with that. Doctors are idolatry and medicine is awful. If I had had that thought process when my daughter had ITP, she would have died. There would have been no going down to UVA for her to get gamma globulin treatments, which eventually turned it off. There would have been no giving her pints of packed platelets, other people's platelets, including my own. I donated platelets for her quite a few times. Thank God for mammograms and diagnostic testing. Yes, 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 yes. No, they don't believe in health insurance. They consider health insurance gambling. That's another weird thing. And my friend that I've talked about that is now using insulin, she did finally get health insurance after they left. But while she was there, that was forbidden. We had health insurance all along because my husband worked for the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Bureau of Labor Statistics at the U.S. Department of Labor. So we actually had pretty decent insurance, the gold standard, the federal program one. And that's been really good, particularly since I've had all my issues with asthma. Yesterday I was felled last night by another bout, and it was pretty intense, but I got it under control today. Even though today is going to be I don't do a whole lot day. It's going to be a sit around and crochet day. So I did make myself worse because with a couple of my conditions, I did try their way first. And then when I didn't get better, I went to the hospital. So my friend now has health insurance. She had an enormous tumor right here, I guess, behind her ear. And had it for years and was frightened to death it was cancer, but she would not get it tested. She would not go to the doctor. None of that. Oh, Lisa, that's interesting. That is very interesting. Red Cross won't let me donate blood now because I lived in Europe back in the 80s when AIDS was rampant. So I'm off that list. I can donate stuff like plasma and platelets to family members, though, through the hospital. Yeah. They are part of a group that has not seized upon Bethel Redding's healing philosophy. It was Lisa. Our church had become involved with Bethel Redding, which was a huge, horrible thing. It turned our church from church to the C word, to CULT. It did. Because nobody was allowed to do anything different. You had to follow that healing philosophy. Towards the end, I really, 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 I learned to downplay when I went to the doctor and downplay my problems. And I think because of that, that's what brought my asthma back, because I hadn't had asthma in years. And when I hit 45, it came back with a roar post-menopause by a couple of years. It was pretty intense. Before that, I hadn't had it for years, since I was like 15. I had little bouts of it from 32 on, but just little minor bouts. And it went nuts from there. they're good about that. They're good about catching that, especially since there's more um, diagnostic testing now than there ever has been before in the history of medicine. That's not a bad thing. Now, anytime I go down to the clinic down here, well, actually, it's back that way, and my asthma's out of control, and I'm like, I'm in out of control status. I can't make it shut down. It won't do anything, and I know that I need just a little pinch of steroids because I'm mostly steroid intolerant. I can take a little bit, and it seems to work now, though. Before they do any of that, one of the first things they do is they do a chest x-ray so that they can look and see just how bad and how long my asthma's been going on and how much fluids are down in there. In my old church, that would have been forbidden. That would have been like, no, 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 no. This is a Bethel vetting thing. Exactly, Reno Rue. My church was heavily involved with that. I've talked about this before, how we had all these books that we studied, and a lot of us joined the healing ministry, which turned out to be a whole lot of BS. And I just wanted to, talk about that. That's really how they handled medicine. And I did not. I handled medicine normally. But back to my friend with the lack of insurance. She had this big tumor right behind her ear, and she was scared of it for years. And I would talk to her and say, Joni, just go get it evaluated. What would it hurt? She's like, well, I think it's cancerous and I'll die if they start cutting into us. No, if it's cancerous, you need to know ASAP so that they can treat it. So even though she was going with the whole thing with the Bethel a lot of ways, towards the end, she started to turn seriously against it. She went to Bethel. She quit going to Bethel trainings. And our friend that was gung-ho Bethel and doing the healing rooms has had nothing but health problems and had to turn against that. So she got it cut out. And I went and sat with her that day at the hospital. Even though her husband was there, I sat in the waiting room. I prayed for her because she was just devastated. She acted like she was going to die but she had not ever had surgery. Well, shoot, I've had so many crazy things in my life. Unfortunately, I've had surgery a number of times. I got scars in various places for different surgeries. So when she came out and they told her it was 100% benign, it was just some weird growth. Oh, Angela, I'm so sorry about that. Some of these churches that are on the cult edge, they don't allow any room for anything for personal likes, dislikes, behavior, any of that. They just go crazy with it. Rita Rue, that was what they were believing. And the thing is, there's so many different kinds of cancer that's not even the remote truth of it. You can have encapsulation cancer where it's encapsulated. That's how my breast ones were. It was encapsulated. They just plucked it right out. And I didn't have to have a complete mastectomy because it was small enough and encapsulated enough that they were able to do that. Now, I have had issues off and on since my tumor and cancer treatments with one side being bigger than the other, and found out that that's true for a lot of women. It's not just those of us who have been cut on. So I don't understand why the bra manufacturers don't make bras with different cup sizes for each side, because that's a common problem. And mine was even more extreme until I went and got everything evened up pretty much. That would be a tough year, Bossy. That would be a really tough year. The Catholic Church is pretty good about that. I've got to say that. I got to give them props. I'm a former Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I'm not a Catholic now. Sometimes I do go to the Catholic Church here because I really enjoyed some of the sermons that the little homilies that the priest gives. But it's not the demonic thing that evangelicalism tries to make it, which is a throwback all the way back to the beginning of when Martin Luther posted his was it 95 theses on the door of the cathedral. So there's that. But it was always a push me, pull you kind of thing with me because I knew how they thought about it. I still went to the doctor. I didn't go as frequently as I probably should have. I ended up with more problems than not because of the fact that I would only go if it was almost life-threatening. It had gotten ridiculous. That is right. It will save your life if they catch this stuff in the right times. Angela, she likes to throw that word around a lot. KJ throws around that C word at any organized religion. And I have to laugh because somebody sent me links the other day to the Midwest Christian, what was it? The Midwest Christian Outreach, I think was the name of the organization. And I went in and I looked at that guy's theology. Now, why would I do that? Because apparently KJ is claiming he reached out to her. He says she reached out to him. I don't know, but I want to know what his theology is. And his theology is not very much different than the organizations that he himself is calling the C word. I took a look at the books he was recommending, and it was all apologetics and ridiculous stuff, putting down Catholics, putting down everybody else. I haven't talked to him, Bossy, because I looked at his theology. I know what his theology is. His theology is not very different than any of the people that he's telling will go to hell. And I don't have time for that. I ain't got nobody's got time for that. Its name is Don. I think it's Vinot. I'm not sure how they pronounce that. And I see no difference between him and a lot of the places that he's calling the C word. He is a fundamentalist evangelical Christian with some of the same very toxic and abusive theology that I see going on wide. But he says he's against spiritual abuse. Well, I guess unless it's his brand of spiritual abuse. So, Ginger Doug, her husband, hates Catholics. Oh yeah, he does. He does. He's a piece of work. I feel sorry for Ginger because I think he probably makes her jump through some pretty big hoops that I've observed. And she loves to stick that label on anything. Lisa, she went from the Baptist church to the Catholic church. That is interesting. So I have to talk a little bit about the video from yesterday. I don't know how many of you saw Bobby's video, Bobby the Cat, Recats with Bobby. I have really, really, really enjoyed a lot of his videos. Now, I don't watch all of them because sometimes he's talking about people that I just do not get. I don't watch those, the ones that are about creators I don't know. He's talking about people that I just do not get. I don't watch those, the ones that are about creators I don't know. But I was watching his KJ ones really intensely because very interesting. He brings up a lot of interesting points. He points out her hypocrisy. Well, he did a series of them on KJ and the C word and the CULT. He pointed out that the two stories she told about her church experiences don't jive. The timelines don't jive. It all completely is negated by some of the things she's written, some of the articles she's written, some of the things she said. The story she told me is they went to this standard evangelical church. They taught Sunday school and participated in everything. And the people of that church were not supportive of Vaughn and his problems in any way, shape, or form, her son. And she was expecting them to help them with financial burdens, and they did not. I think that's the real story of why she left that church and how. And I don't doubt that people wouldn't talk to her afterwards because that happens. Once you are out of high demand religious organization, I'm going to call it that instead of the C word, because I don't think it was probably a C word. Once you're out of that, the ones that are still in there are going to treat you like Nixon treated Agnew, like you don't exist. I certainly experienced that when I left my old church. Oh, but I got to go back to my friend that died of uterine cancer. That is the only time I've heard from a lot of women from my church, my old church. They all called me up and wanted to know if I thought that my friend died, Chloe died, because she had been promiscuous as a teen. They're all buying the Christian lie that if you were sexually out there, if you're having yourselves a good time, you're knocking boots, guys are not married to, then your chances of having uterine cancer go up. I don't know how true that is. I've seen some statistics that seem to indicate it is a slightly higher than average, but I was kind of like, WTF, why are you asking me this? You haven't talked to me in like 10 years and you're going to call me up and say this nonsense? No. I said a lot of that. That week when she died and when the news came out, because they were people that didn't talk to me at all and said nasty things about me. Hey, Sunday, they said nasty things about me when I left, and would not talk to me again. But they're going to call me up and ask me this, pick my brain. I know it has many, many causes, Lisa. And they were all trying to pin it on the fact that she had been promiscuous in her teens, they thought. Nobody even really knew that. And so back to Bobby. I adore Bobby. I like his videos. I'm going to post a link to this third one. I watched the first one and I was just jaw dropped because, as I was saying, what Katie Joy's experience was with church that she explained to me, and what in the first video was all her having lifted large parts of my trauma and my life experience and mixing it a little bit with hers and telling those stories that weren't even remotely true. I was part flabbergasted and part heartbroken and part triggered because the trauma of those things is just, it's awful. I don't know when that stuff ends. I'm trying to write about my church experience, and I'm finding myself getting very bogged down because of the trauma and losing days to the trauma. So I've kind of turned it into sort of a comedy because that's the only way I can emotionally deal with what happened to me and some of the things that I experienced. So to hear her blithely borrow them and screw them up was one of the most hurtful things I've had to go through this year. One of the things that strikes me as odd about her various stories about this is that she always says, rock and roll church. You know something? That's not even a term that is used for, usually it's contemporary worship is what we say. That's the official term. That's the term everybody uses. Nobody says rock and roll church. The other ones that just pop out that tell me she was never part of that, she started talking about she hung around only with church people. Only church people. We have a special word for that in evangelicalism. Fellowship. She never once has used the word fellowship. She talked about, explain that. That's common. We used to just call that getting drunk on the Lord. And there were all kinds of other things that we used to call that stuff. I used to call it, like I said yesterday, my personal Holy Spirit crack rock high, because it was a high. I'm not going to lie, and I don't even know what that's all about. But hearing her use those terms, not use the correct terms, tells me she was never part of it at all. You have to use the correct terms if you're going to talk about these things. You have to talk about Bethel and their no illness thing. She talked about listening to Bethel and Hillsong music. Said she didn't know why. Well, you know why, because during those contemporary worship services, and in our old church, it was a good 6 or 7 songs, the very beginning, and we were in worship team. And if it was a conference weekend, and we did hold conferences, and I was a worship team, I might be getting up on that platform 3 to 4 times that day and doing a full hour of music. So to hear her just say those things like, well, I don't know why we were listening, because they are both enormous in the contemporary worship field. I don't know of many worship teams that don't use their music. Let's just put it that way. I got here to Tamarindo, and the church we were going to was using worship material from both places, and they added a Phil Wickham song while I was here, and I said, I don't think we ought to use Phil Wickham. They said, why? And so I started explaining about Bethel and what a CULT Bethel is, and how we should not be using their theology in any way, shape, or form, and pointing out the parts of that Phil Wickham song that don't line up with the Bible. So everything she's saying, there's a more complex thing behind it. There's a more complex thing. There are actual terms that people use for these in the churches. Fellowship is huge. You are pushed to be around fellow believers. They would cite the scripture that said, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, as justifying that. Even though if you look at Jesus, he was hanging around with prostitutes, tax collectors, and other people on the fringes of society. He wasn't just hanging out with his 12 disciples. It was going out there and doing the stuff out with people that society rejected. There is a YouTube out there showing that she faked the receipt for a donation to Gabby Petito. I saw that too. Christian radio is very big, Sunday, and it is big in the South. I don't even attend church, and I listen. She's just dogging religion. She is always dogging religion. And she's had several long conversations. And this is coming from Don Vinay. I don't know how he pronounces it. Just depends. I guess I'm going to have to go back and figure out how he pronounces his name. She said that he said this weekend he had a bunch of long conversations with her, and he kept trying to explain to her that the ATI IBLP does not fit the bite model of the CULT. Does not fit at all. Not every church that you disagree with is going to be like that. One of those things that I miss from the South, I miss Christian radio. I miss listening to songs. One of the things that's happened to me here is I've not kept up with that because I'm not listening to Christian radio. So I've kind of had to go out on my own and explore. And I picked up some bands that I'd never listened to in the States that I love to listen to now. I think my favorite is for King and Country, because most of their songs talk about a state of brokenness with dealing with life's problems. My favorite, and I've shared this with Cindy Kunzman, one of my absolute best friends in this world, happens to be Christian. The one that has the biggest impact on me is Burn the Ships. The song talks about hard circumstances, and it starts off with, how do we get here? It's time to burn the ships. It's time to just let go of those things and just walk the heck away from them. I mean, I need that. I need that kind of encouragement every day. I like Jesus. Jesus likes me. That was actually a song written by one of the former members of my old church. And he used to try and sing it and play it at every home group we ever had. And when I was running worship at home group, well, I could tell you horror stories from that one. It was power up the pioneers and drowned his ass out, and got to that point. It got so ridiculous. So now you guys, you know that this is the way it is in any church connected to Bethel, and not just connected to Bethel. I've seen independent fundamentalist Baptist churches that don't believe in doctors. This is one of those theologies that cuts across most of churches that are fundamentalist, or fundamentalist evangelical, Fundigelical, as I like to call them. So that's, women get the short end of the stick. They have to do everything. They're not allowed health care. They're not allowed independent thinking. They're supposed to smile and make babies and homeschool those babies and do everything on a shoestring budget. It just doesn't work that way. And life doesn't work that way. Are they afraid because doctors are mandatory reporters? Bossy, I believe that's probably part of it. That's probably part of it, I would say. And another thing is male doctors are extremely forbidden, but you're not allowed to be a doctor if you're a woman in this group either, because women are supposed to stay in their place, which is home having babies. And if you work at all, you have to do something like an MLM or work from home, doing something like call centers, that sort of thing, teaching English to the Chinese, which they've just ended that. The Chinese have put the kibosh on that. So everybody I know here that does that for a living is scrambling to do something else. More kids, more kids. You're exactly right. Because that was a big thing when Susanna Anderson, Stephen Anderson's wife, she was pregnant with twins. This was like, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. She had twin to twin, what do they call that? Twin to twin transfusion syndrome, which, don't quote me on this, but if I remember right, it's where when the umbilical cord comes in from the placenta, one of the twins is not getting much because it's all being transfused to the bigger, stronger twin. She had that, and there was a big controversy with that because she had said for years and years and years that male gynecologists were nothing but perverts. She said that. She said they were perverts that just wanted to cop a feel. Guess what she ended up having to do? She ended up having to use a male OB-GYN that was an expert on this twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. So it's just another case of these people. They have their weird quirks, and when the rubber meets the road for some of them, they will abandon their little quirks and get treatment. I thank God she did, because it could have been really bad if she had not had this treated, had not dealt with it with a specialized OB-GYN that's all he did was deal with high risks. One of the babies died in utero, and the other one was born perfectly healthy and normal. So it was a good outcome. One pastor's wife in the old church told me to quit working outside the home. That church was sliding into the funny thing. I exited stage left. Lisa, good for you, because that's one thing. They used to put a lot of pressure on us for the same thing. And it was a little bit different with me. I sometimes worked, I sometimes didn't. It depended upon our financial needs for our family. I got a lot of crap about that. But, if your husband turns to you and says, you need to be bringing an income in so that we can do X, Y, or Z, so we can pay towards a college fund, whatever. I always would, but I always felt conflicted about it. I always felt like I should be home with my kids. That was really where my heart was. That was the thing I wanted to do. But reality comes flooding in. When they're both in college at the same time was the roughest. And I worked the most jobs I've ever worked. I worked several at the same time, specifically just to get money coming in. It wasn't an easy or fun time, but I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I'm on the other side. I'm on the retirement side now. I was supporting the family while hubby was in college. So there's that. Lisa, that's a good reason to work. That is a really great reason to work. At one point, we were talking about my husband going after his PhD and me working while he was chasing the PhD, but that didn't happen. It was one of those things that just got put off to the side. And it's kind of sad because he is an excellent teacher. He's teaching English here right now. He's teaching English, and he has a contract doing that for one of the organizations here. And he's an excellent teacher, but he inherited that from his mother. His mother was an instructor at LSU for many years. She taught communication studies, so that kind of thing I think is almost genetic, because one of his nieces is a teacher. He has taught off and on his entire life, and he's enjoyed it, and he's good at it. You did a lot for your family. That's right. You did what you had to do to support your family, to get you to the other side, to make sure that you had better income later on. Supporting anybody while they're going through education is so important. Like I said, that was one of the big reasons why I worked when my kids were in college, because I felt like contributing to their education was far more important than staying home. Plus, they had already left the house by then. What was I going to stay home with? Stay home with my birds and my cats? So he's teaching high school math at a new church. Well, he was. Okay. That's interesting that he would teach it at a church school. Some church schools are excellent, some aren't. And it's just, it cuts all across the board there. So I see my connection is unstable and I'm running out of juice here on myself. So I'm going to go ahead and go. You guys have an excellent day. And if you see that other creator, know that many of her stories are somebody else's trauma that she has co-opted to make money off of it. For her, it's all about money. I don't know if you saw the thing she was putting out on her Twitter the other day about how she spent $500 at Target, which is, it's just wrong. It's wrong to brag on that stuff. And I don't even think that's that much stuff. When I do my runs to the States, I can way go over that because I have to shop for the things I can't get here. Okay, I'm finally going. Talk to you guys later. Way go over that because I have to shop for the things I can't get here. Okay, I'm finally going. Talk to you guys later.